Live from London, this is BBC News. The White House says far too many civilians are being killed in Gaza after a deadly Israeli airstrike on a school compound. The funeral takes place today of 9-year-old Alice da Silva Agar, one of 3 young girls killed in the Southport knife attack. The governor in western Russia orders more civilian evacuations as the surprise Ukrainian military offensive on Russian soil continues. A 6th Banksy in 6 days. So what might the elusive street artist reveal next?
As you can see, there's quite a lot of people here today. It's quite nice for Crookwood.
It's nice to have something nice for a change though. And I think a lot of people here have come quite far.
I'm Helena Humphrey. Good to have you with us. We start in the Middle East, where Israel is facing growing international condemnation after a strike on a school compound where thousands of displaced Palestinians were taking shelter. The director of a local hospital said that the facility had received 70 bodies and the remains of at least 10 more people. The Israeli army disputes the figures. Egypt said that the strikes showed Israel lacked the will to end the war. France condemned the strike, quote, in the strongest terms, while the White House lamented that too many civilians were being killed in Gaza. This report from Jenny Hill contains images you may find distressing.
Anguish, bewilderment. Israel struck before dawn, shattering the sanctity of morning prayer. Thousands of displaced civilians were sheltering here, a place of refuge, suddenly a scene of carnage. There isn't any safe place, this woman cries. No place is safe. Where is the world, he asks. Why does it stay silent in the face of these crimes? How many times have Gaza's ravaged walls echoed to the sound of a mother's grief? Says 3 of her sons were killed. I'm 80, she sobs. I've never seen anything like this before. The way they're bombing us is like an earthquake. But Israel claims this was a legitimate target, that the school housed a Hamas command center. In a statement on social media, an Israeli Defense Force spokesman said around 20 Hamas and Islamic Jihad militants were operating out of the compound. Israel's repeatedly struck school buildings in recent weeks. Each time they insist they conceal Hamas bases, and each time they insist they strive to minimize civilian casualties.
The strike comes at a time of heightened tension in the Middle East. International governments are urging Hamas and Israel to agree a ceasefire and hostage return deal as soon as possible. And extensive diplomacy is ongoing to try to stop the conflict in Gaza from spiralling into an all-out regional war.
And as Palestinians mourn their dead and take shelter for another fearful night, it's hard to see hope in the ruins of Gaza. Jenny Hill, BBC News, Tel Aviv.
Well, the US Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris also echoed the White House's condemnation of the loss of civilian life in Saturday's deadly Israeli airstrike on a school compound in Gaza. Take a listen.
You know, yet again, there are far too many civilians who've been killed. I mean, Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties.
Well, Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic is with me in the studio once again. Good to see you, Mohamed. 24 hours, over 24 hours now on from this airstrike. What more are we learning?
So lots of condemnation, international condemnation to the amount of civilian deaths in this strike. Algeria, the Arab country, is requesting an urgent meeting for the UN Council to discuss the matter, and lots of calls to Israel to constrain. Israel, however, continued shelling some parts of Rafah, Khan Yunis, and asked lots of parts in eastern Khan Yunis to evacuate. We're expecting more strike in the coming hours. This is what's happening normally when they ask people to evacuate. Hamas denied completely that there were fighters of them in the compound or in the prayer area. Israel issued a statement, named 20 people or so who are Israel saying they are belong to Hamas and they were in the compound. Hamas said these fighters were killed previously in previous occasion, and there are clear instructions for their fighters not to mix with the civilians, and even if there were fighters in this area, they wouldn't be praying with the people in the school.
You mentioned that international condemnation from the likes of Algeria, also the White House, and Vice President Kamala Harris saying too many civilians are being killed in this conflict. The possibility of a UN Security Council meeting, is that likely to exert any pressure?
Of course, because now there is a mounting pressure on Israel to return back to the negotiating table on Thursday, as suggested by the United States. If the UN Council would come and have a statement that's calling both parties to return back to the negotiating table, that would be a positive, and it could also place pressure on Israel to avoid such targeting to shelter places, because it became a systematic practice from the Israeli army that they would target schools, hospitals, and places that they are taking shelter. And even though places that the Israeli army would suggest that they are safe places, but they return back and strike these places.
And also reports today amid concerns of a broader regional war, an exchange of fire between Hezbollah and Israel. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, this is another front that is open now in this war. We saw that Hezbollah struck new places, Mahfat alone and Safad in northern Israel, and wide areas in Al Jalil in northern Israel. Also, Israel replied by shelling some parts in southern Lebanon, like Al Hola and Majd al Salm. There are fears, as always, that Hezbollah would retaliate for the killing of Fuad Shukr, their leader, and also the expected reply from Iran for the killing of Ismail Haniyeh.
All right, Mohamed Taha there from BBC Arabic. As ever, Mohamed, thank you for your reporting.
Thank you, Elena.
Well, let's get some of the day's other news now. And a huge rubbish dump has collapsed near the Ugandan capital Kampala in Gulf